Billy, we've talked plenty about what a fantastic offseason Yzerman has had this year, but one thing we haven't dug quite as deep into is what head coach Derek Lalone might put together in terms of not just lineups, but what he may come up with for the special teams units. So today, I want to dive into what we believe could be the best possible answers to those questions.
So some of the biggest acquisitions we made this offseason, I think, are really going to have a big impact on those special teams. We'll look at those a little later, and we're going to start with line one, where our top line is Larkin centering DeBrincat and Perron with Wallman and Sider on defense. Some of the strengths of this line, putting Larkin with a pure goal scorer, I think is just going to be a great move. I think he's been missing that for just about his entire career. We gave him Raymond, and in Raymond's rookie year, he definitely popped off with Larkin, and I know that Larkin's just made everyone else around him better. DeBrincat could absolutely be that goal scorer for us. It's why we brought him in. It's why we paid the price that we did. And as well as having Perron on the other side, I think it offers a little more size and grind on this line, because that is one of the weaknesses we have listed on here too. And that also allows Wallman and Sider to remain defensive pairs. I know we've already talked about this on the channel quite a bit, how great they were able to play together. I absolutely love those two playing together. I don't want to mess that up whatsoever. So I think this is going to give us probably our best balanced number one lineup. The concerns that come to mind is Perron maybe a little too slow. Perron's getting up there in age, and it's just simply not elite across the rest of the league. When you look at Toronto, when you look at even like Florida, you can even argue Ottawa at this point, teams that we're, really putting ourselves right against, or even Edmonton. We're just not elite. This lineup isn't that, but that's not the strength of this team. We're going to dive into that more as we continue to go down this lineup. I feel like those are few and far between that you're able to find that generational, like, cornerstone player and just build around them. Quite frankly, we haven't had the draft lottery luck to be able to do that. So this team is going to be built a little differently.
I think the only issue I'd take with our chart here is the not elite. And the only reason why I put it that way is I agree that it looks not elite when people are going to look at it and compare it to previous years. Anyone who's been watching some of our recent videos, we are very high on what the potential could be for the combination of Larkin and DeBrincat. We think that Larkin could be the Patrick Kane that everybody is saying that DeBrincat is going to have to learn how to play without. We think there is an extremely high ceiling for Larkin as a playmaker. Right now, in years leading up to now, he's needed to be the scorer, but we really do believe that his true ceiling could be him being an elite playmaker that perfectly complements a player like DeBrincat. So it could prove throughout the year that maybe what you're seeing right here isn't an elite line per se, but you may be putting together and developing chemistry of a future elite pairing. And I don't even feel like that's a stretch, do you?
I hold the term elite to a very high level, and I believe that elite would probably only describe maybe 4, maybe 5 lines across the NHL. So no, I don't think this line's going to become elite.
Pairing. I want to be clear. I'm asking pairing. Do you believe? I don't believe it's a stretch to say that Larkin and DeBrincat could be an elite pairing in the making.
I think I still disagree. I don't think that they're going to be like the McDavid and Draisaitl level almost at all, or even like Kucherov and Point. Like, those are the names that are coming to mind. I feel like this is just going to be an excellent pairing for these two players, and they're both going to perform extremely well. But I don't know if I'm going to say they're going to be towards the top of the league. I just hold that term elite to a truly elite tier.
I think we have different I'm confused because I feel like we have a different perception of the word elite, but I also feel like you and I have also had the conversation in previous videos that Larkin, would you say that the Kane DeBrincat combination could have been considered an elite pairing? That's how I took it as. That's how I always looked at the way Kane and DeBrincat played together as an elite pairing.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think that Larkin can offer some of that, but I also don't think that Larkin's going to be Patrick Kane. I think he's going to be a different style of playmaker, and that DeBrincat's going to thrive. And yeah, DeBrincat could put in 35 to 40 goals, which is a lot in the NHL. It just feels like it's not to the term of like elite for me.
I don't think Larkin needs to be Patrick Kane to be an elite pairing with DeBrincat. I think he could be Larkin elite and a Larkin and a DeBrincat elite, a different type of elite pairing with DeBrincat. I'm going to stand by it. I think even with your definition, I'm not saying we're going into the year at this, and I feel like I was pretty clear with that when I went into it. I don't feel like going into this year, this line or the pairing is going to be elite by any means. But throughout the year, I really believe that Larkin and DeBrincat are going to develop a chemistry that maybe going into the following season could be looked at as an elite pairing in the NHL. But we'll move on to line 2, which also includes a couple of names that we're hoping we see have a big improvement going into next year.
Yeah, this is probably my biggest hope for the Red Wings this year, in that you can pair Berggren and Raymond together, who are both Swedish. They both played with each other overseas, and putting Comfer up the middle, I feel like it just offers you like a true playmaker winger in Berggren and a true goal scorer winger in Raymond. They're both very young. This is very, like, this is a big weight to put on their shoulders kind of deal. I like putting Comfer up the middle because it brings the reliability for the defensive aspect, because I do see this as a weakness of our second line. And putting Gostisbehere and Sherratt together, I know that that's probably also going to shock some people. I'm realizing now our number 2 line is probably going to be the most eye-popping one on this entire list. But I think pairing an offensively minded with a defensively minded defenseman could be great. I think that may have been a problem with Sherratt and Seider, is that you had 2 defensively minded players together. So I'm gonna hope that Sherratt can make it happen with Ghost. He's got to find a place on this roster to fit in, and I would like it to be here. And again, similar to what we have out of our first line, is that this kind of lacks some level of physicality and size. Berger and Comfer and Raymond, they're all relatively smaller. Ghost is a little smaller. Sherratt on this is just about the only physical presence that we have here, but we do see across the NHL that the league is getting smaller faster, so this could be us adapting to it, and that our weakness in it could actually become a strength. Being smaller, faster, younger than your opponents could actually be a great part of this. Having Ghost being able to find Raymond and Bergen on breakouts could be wonderful, but our biggest question on it still is Bergen ready? I want to believe that. That's why I have him here. We can look at the entire lineups a little later and discuss why he's here, but I really want to believe that Berggren can be that setup guy for Raymond on a second line to really pump up those offensive numbers.
I know we're both high on Berger, and that's why we kind of got him up here in line 2. If you had to take a stab at a more, maybe a realistic shot, that maybe someone who isn't as high on Berger and that is going to wait, that's going to play the more wait and see with him game, is there somebody that you would slot in that spot?
There are two names. I think you could bring up Fabry, and I think you could bring up Rasmussen, either one of them into that spot. Both kind of fill the same role. This is, like I said, kind of like the hope take that Berggren's able to take that next step up, and what we saw out of him last season, he's able to continue to grow on and finds a way to perform with Raymond, because Raymond's not dropping down further than the second line. That's just not going to happen. It's about finding who he can play with and still perform. I don't think that's DeBrincat. I don't think that those two would mesh well just on how you watch each one of them play. It could be completely wrong, but I think Raymond has the spot on the second line, and you're trying to find the winger to pair with him. That's the core part of this line, is finding Raymond to be able to pop back.
We're going to see a lot of variety and different ideas for these lineups that the Wings could do, and we'd love to hear yours. If you've watched any of our videos by now, you definitely know that we respond to just about every single comment, so feel free to jump down there really quick and throw down whatever lineups you think would look good. Maybe throw your top line, your power play, rate ours. We could rate yours, whatever. Let's keep the conversation going. We love talking with you guys. But with that, let's jump onto line 3.
Line 3, I have Kopp centering Fabry and Sprong, and on defense, you got Mata and Hall. Some of the strengths of this one, you have great third line scoring wingers out of this one. And the reason I have Fabry down here is simply the injury scare. Like, I don't want to commit so hard to Fabry in these projections to put him up on the top 2. He very well could go there, but if you're being a little more realistic on where he might just fit in and trying to keep those top 2 is realistic as possible, I think he comes down here. You have 2 solid defensive defensemen in Mata and Hall. We've already talked about taking that weight off of Hall's shoulders, and I think moving him down to a second or potentially third line like we have him here is the opportune spot for him. We'll see how he's gonna have a bigger impact on this team later, and it was surprising to me, but having Kopp as your third line center I think is very ideal. He could easily be a number 2 across most of the rest of the league. I'm not going to say every team, but having him be your third line center, you're getting something reliable. The weaknesses, we already talked a little bit about Fabry's health concerns, and the wingers need to create their own opportunities. Kopp isn't going to be that guy. Comfer has a little more offensive playmaking than Kopp does. I think Larkin has a lot more. So I feel like what we've already seen out of Sprong is that ability to create his own opportunities. That was one of the highlights that we talked about when we acquired him. Fabry can do a bit of the same. I think Fabry does rely a little bit more on the people around him, and we just do have a slow defensive pair on the third line. That's not anything to be very concerned about, simply because they should both be able to just play smart enough, like we already saw out of Mata, that the burns aren't going to happen. That's what we're really relying on our third line is, you know, giving an opportunity for Sprong to continue to grow his game and be that third line scorer. And if you can find third line scoring in the NHL, your team does well. Ask the Kraken, ask the Knights, they do it.
Yeah, the two main things that stick out to me when I look at this page in particular is I love Hall in this spot. I love knowing that he's not going to be forced into a high role, that he's going to be able to play his game on the third defensive pairing, not have the high pressure situation. I think he's going to thrive on it. And that could, who knows, that could even grow his game up into where he could step into those harder roles. And the other thing that stands out for me is Sprong. Sprong could be that guy that no one is really expecting to put the puck in the net. I believe he could be, and just based on the lineups that we have, I believe Sprong could be Raymond's safety net. If Raymond doesn't have that year that we're hoping he has, that bounce back year where we hope he puts up 25, 30 goals again, and he shows that he can be a goal scorer for this team in the future. Again, he's young. I'm not trying to make it sound like he needs to do it this year or it's never going to happen. But in terms of trying to put the puck in the net this year, we've looked at the highlights from Sprong. We've seen the type of player that he is. We've seen the type of goals that he scores where he doesn't seem to fully depend on his line mates. He is a goal creator and not just a one-timer. And if Raymond isn't showing that throughout the season, it's nice to know that Sprong could potentially slide up into that spot and give Raymond that third line spot to kind of grow his game a little bit more. So it's nice to know that we have that fallback option if we're still struggling up front.
Do you think that you and I could come to an agreement then that our wingers on the second line and third line could just swap throughout the season?
Yes, I would even go so far as the center, not to the same amount, but I feel like I still have some high hope on Kopp. That isn't any negative to Comfort, but I'm just tossing the name in that I believe the entire second and third line,
the middle six,
really could just swap around depending on how the year is going. I like this as a starting point, but obviously performance is going to change things. And, you know, by the end of the first month, I wouldn't mind seeing almost any combination of these six names and just, you know, finesse it wherever it fits.
Yep. Because of course we're not the ones at training camp. We're not the ones in the locker room seeing how these guys get along, anything like that. We're completely speculating here on what we see happen on the ice. So I really trust that Lalonde's going to be able to figure out which of these middle six are going to best play with one another. I just wanted to keep the Swedes together and the young kids, and I wanted to put them on the second line. I wanted to give them hope and be like, you know what, they're going to pop off. So
I'm with you. And we said at the beginning of the video, like, we don't claim to know what's best. We don't claim to know that this is absolutely going to be the most dominant lineup that you could possibly put together. But in terms of the information that we have, which unfortunately, you know, from our position isn't a ton, I'm really looking forward to see some footage come out from training camp, maybe see what kind of lines they put together, see who they're trying to build chemistry with. And who knows, if we see something sticking out, I would love to revisit this and maybe something shorter and just kind of hone in on maybe what they're trying to make happen. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be a very interesting couple months.
And to stay on the tone of interesting, I know this is going to upset quite a few people down in the comments. I already have in the past. I already have on Twitter, and I will explain myself if you give me the opportunity. But our fourth line, I have Rasmussen setting Costin and Fisher. The reason Rasmussen is here is simply because you need a fourth line center. And when we look through the rest of this lineup, it's not there. Rasmussen has grown as a center. If you watched him every year, he becomes more and more like a true all-around Swiss Army knife for this team. I firmly believe that's what he is. Pairing him with someone like Costin, you have the two big bodies who are going to be able to make space. And then you have to have someone like Fisher on their roster for things that we'll talk about in the future. But just trust me, Fisher has to be there. The strengths of this line, again, the physical presence, being able to create offensive opportunities. Rasmussen and Costin both have an offensive upside. They are not simply big bodies out there that just go out and hit. I think they both have great scoring touches. You get a great fourth line center out of Rasmussen and a simple plug and play right winger. I don't think Fisher is like any, you know, cornerstone to this team, but I think he absolutely plays a role. And once we've laid this out, I understood why we got him. As soon as you started taking a look at some special teams lines, you understand why Fisher's here. But weaknesses, I think you lack a little speed with the size, and it really sucks to have Rasmussen.
Is our whole team slow?
No. No,
it just feels like second line. I know, but most of the lines, like, that's one of the biggest weaknesses is that it's that they're not going to be keeping up in the speed department, which If what you're saying is true about the league going to smaller and faster, that's not what you want to hear on especially more than one of your lines.
Well, I think the big thing that we've discovered with this team so far is how balanced it just kind of feels across the board. There are a couple spots where you're like, okay, so maybe you lack a little physicality there. And then you look at this one, you're like, okay, maybe you lack a little speed there. It's not like Rasmussen's like insanely slow by any means. In the grand scheme of things in the NHL, yeah, I bet he's a little on the slower end. He's bigger, and we absolutely love him for it. He's able to play that grind, nose to the grindstone kind of guy and be able to create plays. At this point is when you have to start talking about some of the players that are left off this list and why Rasmussen would be stuck on the fourth line. Guys, I am not feeling Veleno. Like, I am just not trusting in him. I'm hating the face-off numbers. If he got better this offseason, plug him in here. If he comes into training camp a better player, a better true center for this team, then that's where he can play in. That's where you can plug him in, and Rasmussen can hop up to a second line. He could even hop up all the way to a first line. That's how versatile Rasmussen is. But I feel like with the lack of true depth at center, you need a fourth line center. And if Veleno can't carry that weight, which doesn't feel like a big weight, I don't see him making the starting lineup unless he gets better. If I see him on the starting lineup, then I will trust that he got better, and whatever they're seeing out of training camp is a much better all-around Joe Veleno. Maybe I'm thinking a little too much about it, but man, that stomp that he had in the international tournament, something just that doesn't stick with me right. I always try to think about like how much pride there is in the winged wheel and how critical I am of the dirty players across the league. That stomp, Josh, that stomp is really bad. That's not a hockey play.
It's not
whatsoever.
a good look. It's also important to note, I don't believe Veleno is currently under contract.
Yep, he's not even signed yet.
So it's completely fair to leave him off the lineups because he's, as of right now, he's not a Detroit Red Wing.
Yep, we have his RFA rights, but it's not signed, and I haven't really heard anything about it either. The other names that we have listed off here: Lindstrom, Casper, Edvinsson, and Soderblom. I think Soderblom again could plug in on the Fabry spot, the Fisher spot. Casper, would love for Casper. If you had me like put like another big hopeful thing together, it's that Casper can be the fourth line center, and then Rasmussen can find their way up. That's the only thing holding Rasmussen back, is that we don't have a fourth line center ready to our knowledge as of right now. And then yeah, Edvinsson, I think he'd be able to plug in just about anywhere you need. If any of those bottom three defensemen like Sherratt, Mata, Hall go down, I think he instantly just gets plugged into one of those. If Gostisbehere or Wallman go down, I think one just swaps out for the other one. It's there's a lot of versatility on this team.
Remember, if you don't like these lineups, A, we're probably wrong, but B, even if we're right and you don't see your favorite player high enough in the lineup, there's a lot of injuries in the NHL.
Yep.
They happen pretty consistently. And a lot of these guys that got left off as a healthy scratch, it's pretty much just healthy scratch for day one.
Yep.
There's going to be injuries. People are going to need rest. A lot of these names are going to get their reps with different players. They're going to get their shot. And if they prove themselves, if they take those small moments of opportunity and capitalize on them and show that they belong there, they're going to get more shots at it. Yep. And these are going to look completely different a month into the season. Going into the season with our goalies, I think it's pretty obvious Husso is the expected number one. You'd hope it stays that way throughout the year. We've got a couple of backups that neither of which really stand out as the strong number two. It seems like with experience, you're going to lean toward Reimer, but what do you hope to get out of your goaltender situation as Yzerman has set it up?
I'm really hoping that whatever backup goalie we have, whether that's like a tandem, we're just going with the hot hand, whoever's, you know, playing better in practices, anything like that. I'm hoping that they can take 32 games between the two of them. I don't want to just go into the season saying, you know, Reimer needs 16, Lyon needs 16, and Husso needs 50. I don't want to set any expectation like that. Just go with the hot hand for the backup. But the fact is, I think you need to take the weight off Husso's shoulders. I think that we saw last year that the gas started to run out, and it really sucked to see that. Like, he had such a hot start for us, things were going so well, and after you started seeing him playing too many games in a row, and you're like, well, we can't put in Hellberg, and then we know about the mess that we had with Ned. Unfortunately, things just weren't working out here. So yeah, it was a lot of weight on Husso's shoulders when we just traded for him from a backup and put him into the starting spot and kind of said, go do it for us. So I'm really hoping that both of those goalies can stay healthy for us. You know, cross your fingers, goalies stay healthy for you. You never know what you're going to get with a goalie out of the NHL anymore. And just following the hot hand to be the backup to hopefully take 30, to 35 games off of Huso's back and still be able to rely on Huso into the playoffs would be the most ideal situation, I believe.
I think it is a completely fair take to be worried about the goaltender
Yes.
situation, because as much as you can look at Huso and be like, we love what he did last year, I went into last year loving what I saw from Ned the year before. And we
Hmm.
all know how that went into last season. If Huso drops off, it's a steep drop after Huso in terms of a starter. So it sucks to have a lot of pressure on one guy like that. And normally, we don't look at any other player on the team and go, if he could really drop off, it's the position.
Yep.
It's just how the NHL has been with goalies, where one year they can be Vezina worthy, and the next year they're lucky to scratch the surface. And it's something you really, really hope doesn't happen with Huso. Hopefully he can be that reliable guy going into this year. I'm not trying to give any sort of, lack of confidence in him. It's just a scary position when you don't have a reliable backup, so that Huso can kind of take a little bit of time, let someone else step forward and let him find his bearings again. It's a tough spot, scary spot. Speaking of scary spots, let's look at this power play.
This power play is scary. Let
It
me tell
is.
you. Because the biggest strength I think we have on this one is our top of the umbrella, the DeBrincat, Gostisbehere, Wallman area. Man, those one-timers are lethal. Each and every single one of them have the potential to score from outside purely on power itself. And
Yep.
I think that's really hard for a PK to really address. And then on top of it, you have down low your skilled forwards in Raymond and Larkin, who are going to be playing to their inside handedness. I think that's a very important part to this with those two players, in that if the puck needs to be worked down low, you can still absolutely trust them to be able to make the plays from down there. So if a PK heavy commits to being pressuring up top, which is something that we have seen against the Red Wings a lot. Josh, do you remember all those times whenever you see a team PK against the Red Wings, it was high pressure everywhere all the time? It was just so frustrating. I get upset thinking about it
You
because,
just get flustered.
yeah, because it was just skate at them and they're probably going to fumble the puck a little bit and then they get to just clear it out. It was something you didn't see against any other team. With this lineup, I don't think you can do that anymore. I think each and every one of these guys with the puck, I 100% trust that if you're going to pressure them too hard, they're going to find the open guy. It allows Larkin to go be the bumper guy. It allows Raymond, that if you paid attention to the way that he scored on the power play last year, it was Kubalik in that Wallman Fabry spot, that when the pass went over to him, he would be able to find Raymond again on the far side, right on the post. Raymond's just posted up and it's just slam dunks every single time. With him getting a year of practice with that, with it being Wallman over there, Wallman can absolutely make that pass as well that Kubalik did. I think all across this entire power play is lethality to score. The
Yes.
weakness, though, is a net front presence and our size. It feels like if the puck
Not a lot of big bodies.
yeah, it feels like if the puck is going to be pushed up on the boards, if something's going to go wrong, which it always will, hockey is a very imperfect sport, that if Raymond, Larkin, DeBrincat, even Wallman are getting tied up on the boards, it feels like it's a decent opportunity for the PK to get the puck out. They aren't going to be able to body anyone else out of those situations. So that's the weakness of it. I just believe that these scorers up top will be able to just beat goalies with power. I don't think they need the person in front to be able to screen. And that means when we look at power play 2, it's a bit of a different vibe almost entirely. I think players still share a lot of the same responsibilities, as you guys can see with the blocks on the screen. It's still like the same top of the umbrella across like the entire NHL. It feels pretty standard at this point that this is how you're going to line up. It now offers the ability for Perron and Sider, who are not going to beat goalies with power. They're not going to beat them with one-timers the way that you see out of Wallman, DeBrincat, Gostisbehere, anything like that. But instead, this is when you offer the net front presence out of a Rasmussen or a Kostin, who I think could absolutely thrive here because of how they can still have that offensive edge to themselves. Like they can still score in tight. They have that scoring touch to themselves, and allowing Sprong to be your bumper, that when this puck is being moved around, because you can trust everyone up top with the puck again to be able to move it around. If you're able to find Sprong in the slot is a bumper, the way that we find Larkin, yeah, we've seen how he can get a quick shot off. He has a quick lethal shot. It's a wonderful opportunity for him to be able to contribute offensively.
And the part I know I brought up to you is the part that gets me the most excited about power play 2 is the options you have in high IQ playmakers. I think
Yes.
having Bergeron and Sider almost alternating in quarterbacking the power play,
Hmm.
knowing I feel like I trust both of them heavily with the puck. I trust both their ability to slow it down, move the puck to where it needs to go. And I think that's going to help someone like a Sprong, who we're hoping can be even more of a scorer than he was in previous years, and a Perron who, like you said, doesn't have the lethal one timer anymore, but I still think he could be that guy where if
Yep.
presented with the right pass at the right time, he could put the puck on net and he's pretty accurate. It's not a cannon anymore, but he's a good option for it. I think Bergen and Sider, if Power Play 1 didn't already look so good, I would wonder how we have both of them on Power Play 2. But I really, really love the way the Power Play 2 has come together with this, where it feels like you don't have just one that, all right, once they swapped to Power Play 2, that was our shot. I would be excited to see this one as well.
Yes, and I want to throw it back again to that we have the right shooters. These guys aren't the powerful shooters. Perron, Bergeron, and Sider can all find the lanes. If you have coasting Rasmussen, Sprong creating havoc in front, they're gonna find the ways to hit the corners. They just do. You already see it out of each one of them. So having that like dual threat, the first one the powerful, the second one taking the right shooters, I absolutely love it. And I do want to mention specifically on this power play is that I believe you have to have Rasmussen and Berggren and Coasting and Comfort paired together because you need someone to take the faceoffs. That's why they're layered the way that they are. I think those are the pairs that you have to put together. If you put Berggren and Coasting out there, I'm not sure who you're having take the faceoff unless you do the take the faceoff, get off the rink. But I think that's
Yeah.
something you would actively like to avoid.
Yeah, that seems more like a desperate situation where your
Yes.
best face-off guy, well, either A, your best face-off guy just is not fit for the power play, or if you are in such a crucial situation, this power play is a must-score situation, you need the puck.
Yep.
But I don't think that's what you write up, as your power play
Yeah,
plan.
exactly. That's backup.
All right, we talked about our power plays. How are we feeling confidence-wise going into the penalty kill options?
So this is what brought me the most stress going through this. Like, I know we could look back and be like, oh, Bergen's second line. And you're like, should I do that or should I not? But this is the one that stresses me out. And I want to start with the weaknesses. I know we've been starting with the strengths. We do not have a lot of penalty killing forwards. And I think that's why we got Fisher. We mentioned it earlier. But if you look down our wingers, guys, not any of them have penalty kill experience. I know it could become a part of someone's game. That would be like a way to find, your way to make the team. You want to find a spot on this roster? Be a forward right now that kills penalties. Shout out Joe Valeno. You want a spot on this team? Win some faceoffs, play on a PK. That's how you're going to make it here. I don't see it happening, so I am predicting off of that where I have Kopp and Fisher is our top PK forwards, and then Hall and Sider. And guys, I think it's going to surprise you, and it's because it surprised me. It's one of those things, just like we did in the past. You start to do a little research into these things, you're like, oh my God, Hall was ranked the number 9 PK defenseman in the entire NHL last year. I had no idea. I just kind of believed that, he's a good defensive defenseman. Number 9 on the PK. And where I got that was from morehockeystats.com. So if you want to go look that up and start doing your own research on who can PK on this team, I think you will come up with the same issues that we did. So with that, I think you get to pair him with Sider, who, again, this is like the strength of Sider's game. Defensively, he is just a monster. So him continuing to grow on the PK, becoming that true number 1 defenseman on our team, I think is fantastic. Kopp, I've already loved what I've seen out of him on the PK. I think having him as the center spot in there feels really, really good. And then we can just look over at number 2 and where Comfort and Rasmussen, I believe, will be our 2 forwards with Sherratt and Mata. And this is where that, again, the entire having so few wingers on a PK is going to hurt us. It can also help us. I think having 3 of your centers on your PK is a little tough. It offers a nice ability to have 2 centers on this. It allows your forward line number 1 to be fresh right after a PK, which often then means that they will go against a lower tier line on the opponent because their power play line typically going to be littered with their top 2 lines as well. If you can have a top 10 PK in the league, that opens the opportunity for your forward line right after to answer. And we saw that a lot out of the Red Wings in the past. I believe it was the Mike Babcock Red Wings. When we had a PK, like you had so many of like the bottom 6 forwards in those
Yep.
PKs that the next thing you know, you're
Yep.
getting hit with Zetterberg, Datsuk, and like Holmstrom again, and you're like,
Well, that was the
good
beauty
luck.
of like you can go as far back as like the grind line
Yep.
to be your PK, or you can do more recent-ish years when you were looking at a Glendenning who
Mhm.
was specializing on the penalty kill, not guys that were going to be on your top lines, so they could go out there, kill a long penalty. They could work together with those bottom lines to kill long penalties, and then suddenly your top line is fresh going against hopefully line 2 or 3 on the opposition.
Yep.
So yeah, it could work out for you. It could also, if the timing doesn't work out, it could kind of screw you a little bit. But
Yeah.
I think overall, I think it's a strength.
The other thing that I do like about this is that Larkin's not on the PK. Larkin being
Yeah.
able to play 5-on-5 power play time and having him as fresh as possible outside of that is wonderful, because like what we're using him for right now is everything. And it was kind of similar to what we were doing with Cider. And that's why I like being able to drop Cider to the second power play and have him be the #1 PK, is that you get them to be able to rest just a little more.
We put together the best lines we could come up with, but we'd still love to see yours. So feel free to drop that in the comments or throw it in the Discord. We'll see you down there. See you in the next one.